And can, it determine things you should or shouldn't, I don't know about should or shouldn't do, but is it important? Does it have some significance?
Well, my response would be absolutely. I just don't know exactly what. In terms of relating it to something in any scripture we could look at, or in any book we could look at. But food in general is a little bit easier to, well, off the top of my head, talk about. But I believe it does relate to blood type and the whole chemistry of your body and how it actually is a physical translation of something that is spiritual. You know how in fairy tales they tell the kids, like, don't eat food if they go into the giant's house or whatever. They're like, don't eat food if.
Or Persephone in the Greek myth going down to Hades.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, exactly. So why do they? That's kind of like a theme. The reason it's a theme is because those stories are they're like legends or myths, and myths are an attempt to relate the history of our own development of spirituality. So when they tell you don't eat the food, it's always about don't incorporate something that is of a particular vibration into your being, otherwise you will merge with it. So when you go down to Hades, don't eat the food that's at the table, even though it looks delicious, because then you will be stuck there until you're able to deal with that, the quality of that energy you have taken on to yourself.
And just to add kind of to what you're saying, Nick, or one of the reasons I asked you is in this book they talk about how almost every Jewish person, no matter where they live in the world, is a B positive or a B, type B blood type, which arose after the type O, which was the first blood type, and then type A's, which were the next one as we became a agrarian. Then type B, nomadic blood type arose, but almost every Jew, unlike any other group, is type B, as opposed to almost all of them being type O's with some type B's.
Right. Interesting. Oh, I can see Eugenie's. No, that's definitely interesting. And Raina, you said, what was the first one? Were we all a single blood type?
Yeah, initially everyone was a type O, according to, I guess, what this book said anyway. And then as we settled into more agrarian societies, type A arose, type O's, and then when they're relating it to food, they're saying type O's are good at metabolizing, hunter-gatherer type foods, meat, berries, roots, hunter-gatherer stuff. Whereas type A's, because they're more agrarian, had a different immune system. They're more cooperative, so they don't metabolize meat very well, which is a bummer, because if I wanted to do this diet, they're saying no meat. They're vegetarians.
Yeah, I see.
And then type B arose with the nomads on the steppes, so it's more prevalent in Asia.
Gotcha.
And then type AB is the mixing of the two, of a lot of disparate blood types.
I see.
I thought immediately about the rivers going out of Eden, going through Eden or whatever. I know blood is life, water is life. I don't know how that might relate, but that's what went through my head.
Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit about last week how the blood is the thing that conveys the life energy to your physical body, and the heart is the thing that pumps blood. So it's definitely related. don't know at the moment exactly how, but
Okay, maybe something will occur to us as we're talking.
yeah.
But what are you saying, Rainier? What's the book?
Eat Right for Your Type.
So you're
And I
saying,
vaguely remember Mom talking about it when it came out. It came out in '96, I think.
well, it doesn't mean, you know how we are, we come out with something good and then there's 10 more things, so we forget about the other things, so. It could still have been sensible, but what are you saying then? A is more, assimilates more of agriculturally produced kinds of foods? Grains?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
So what are you saying, that A types tend to,
Uh-huh.
tend to metabolize agricultural-based foodstuffs better?
Yeah, that's the thought. He's
Grains
saying
and
that there are these
vegetables?
things called lectins, which
Yeah,
cause clumping.
yeah.
And if you eat a food that's an anti-A type food, like dairy, for instance, supposed to be an anti-A food, when you metabolize it or try to, it causes the body to clump blood cells together, say, or so it causes swelling, which is which is an issue. And then supposedly A's have a low level of acids in their stomach, so they're more prone to stomach cancers. So they're foods that are not good for A's because they don't help with that balance that condition. But in essence, A's are agrarian type foods, vegetables, some grains. They can metabolize wheat supposedly better than most people, but on the flip side, wheat's bad too. It's considered an avoid. But no dairy, They actually suggest eating tofu and soy for your protein, and a little bit of fish.
What about beans?
And a minimal amount of, say, chicken or turkey.
What about beans?
And beans are good, certain beans. Believe it or not, lima beans are bad. I'm like, bummer, because I love lima beans.
Oh, I do too. Don't say it.
So there should be 2 lines at Chipotle's then. One for the vegetarian bowl and one for the beef and chicken bowl.
So there's just A, B, and O in the variations, right?
No, and there's an AB as well. And so AB has the best of A's and B's and the worst of A's and B's, I suppose. I haven't really read a lot about the AB type yet. I just got the book yesterday. My the nurse practitioner that I saw said, well, you might look at this diet as a way of eating. Not as a healthcare practitioner, but as a friend. But ABs are able to synthesize. They have the immune characteristics of both, because they have both sets of antibodies.
This is
So it has 4 blood type, 4 diets.
This is based on a substantial amount of corroborated research?
I've been trying to find that out, but the fellow who wrote it, Dadama, I forgot his first name, Dadama, his father actually started the work in the 60s.
Peter J.
And in the 80s, Peter, I think his name, Peter Dadama, D-A-D-A-M-A, or D-A-D-A-M-O maybe. He continued the research, so I have to look, because the book does not go into his results per se, meaning I did this test and this percentage of this type displayed this characteristic. He alludes to it and talks more about the diet itself. I'd have to see if there were any papers written on it or anything, or if he wrote any papers on it, But the book isn't written from that point of view.
Yeah. Well, that's even more interesting to me, because there are 4 rivers, and there's O, A, B, and then AB. Basically,
Yeah,
4
with
blood
AB
types.
and newest, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if the rivers, if we were to make them blood types based on age somehow. We knew which ones still came out of, which ones still around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Homework, science project, or research project.
Well, there's something else too out that's called, and it's sort of in between or somehow related with this acronym called HIT and the other one called FAST. And it basically at its core, I think, that's a method for getting the maximum amount of benefit from exercise, which is actually very short in duration but high in energy output. It's almost like riding a bicycle. It is. It's anyway. But related to that somehow is that they're finding that there's a significant percent of the population that doesn't respond much to aerobic exercise. So even in terms on the exercise side of things, it seems like we're headed toward more and more of an individualistic kind of, whatever you want to call it, training, schedule, regime. All things don't work for all folks. I mean, you can run because you like to run, but there's a percentage of the population for whom running really doesn't improve their aerobic, what do I want to say, consumption or capability. But on the other hand, there is something called, oh gosh, I'm blanking out. It's related to diabetes. Insulin absorber or something like that. Resistance. Something which, helps put glucose in your system, which apparently exercise can help. So that it's interesting that it's just much more, I wouldn't say complex, but much more thoroughly researched. And then I don't know if there are ethnic groups that respond better, but there's a percentage of the population that does or doesn't.
Well, this fella does touch on different types of exercise based on your blood type as well, because of the way that the blood types deal with stress. So, there are some folks like O's where this, you talked about that very intense physical exercise is good. So according to him, the O's, because they were the hunter-gatherers, that's their way that's the best way for them to exercise. Whereas for A's, because they were about cooperation and living in large groups, stress for them is they have a different way of dealing with stressors. So meditation or yoga or swimming or low impact exercise is better for them because it's about managing their stress and helping them, in essence, minimize the cortisol. So he does talk about different plans for different people or different blood types. Kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I'm not suggesting that we really know what we're talking about yet.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting that there's a lot more individuality. But to me, what I mean by offering that is if essentially all of this is an individual undertaking, we're just finding out more and more that the way your body works and responds is much more individualistic. So to me, it corroborates you finding for yourself. But that's not something that in a culture like ours, we respect enough, maybe. I mean, we use that, but we use that to then make everybody form themselves into huge groups. So that's why we have all these industries that are built up, including food industries. But it's just interesting, because it seems to be, the research is slowly starting to take all of that apart. Anyway.
And the same thing can be applied to our own development from what we learn in here. Everybody's at a different place, and so the same concepts, the same conversations might not help everyone in the same way at the same time, but the idea is you can begin to understand this stuff, and so you can apply it directly to yourself where you feel like you need it in the way that you need it.
But I can also
Or-
understand, being the age I am, that you change in the course of your life. You know, I mean, physical exercise, for example, for me, has just always been a great outlet. And I've always jokingly told people it's not really the exercise, it's because I'm a drug addict and I want the endorphins, because they calm me down. But maybe as you get older, you find other ways to deal with it. So there's all that too, which could well be the same with foods. Just to make
Yeah.
it more interesting. Anyway,
Absolutely.
so it's never over.
While we're on the subject of food, I was wondering why it was that a lot of cultures don't eat pork, or particularly the Judeo-Christian ones.
Also Muslim.
Yeah. No, they say pigs are most anatomically similar to human beings,
Yeah.
to the point where we use their parts in our bodies depending on what we need.
There are a lot of people walking around with pigs inside them, that's right.
So I believe it has to do with the fact that pigs are able to take on the quality of certain energies much better than other animals because they're more like us. So if they happen to take on the quality of an energy that is negative, then it's that much more impactful when we eat it.
Oh, so creepy.
And that's one of the reasons I believe they why they treated that meat that way. Anyway, but they're kind of like one step down from people in terms of intelligence and similarity, which is kind of freaky when you think about it. But
Freakier yet, given the way we, what do I want to say, produce them
right,
for consumption.
And treat them.
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Let's go up to North Carolina to one of the biggest pig farms in the country, and it's impossible to be ecologically and other nutritionally sound the way they do it. But anyway.
okay. So last week I ended talking about this concept of Lucifer. So did anyone have any questions related to that before I got started, based on what we talked about last week, or anything you thought about since then? Because I want to go back over that and make sure that we understand it as best we can. Because I think the way that we resonate with these ideas will affect how people perceive them everywhere. And I want to put something out there regarding
Well,
what this is.
say again what you basically characterized Lucifer as the, what was the word, herald? Did you use that word?
Yes.
I mean,
So I said the herald and a vehicle and a method by which light is returned to its source. So Lucifer is sometimes called the light bearer. And if you are the light of the world, then it bears you. And the method by which you choose to travel, in other words, how you attempt to return to your source, influences the nature of this concept. But it is first and foremost based on you. And it is not something that has been set up separate or outside of us for the purpose of being venerated or something. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I don't really know that much about it, but that's what a lot of apparently secret societies do. They venerate this entity or concept as a distinct standalone thing. And I'll talk about why when we get to that. But I also said that there's two polarities to what it is. And I mentioned two places that it's mentioned in the Bible. That first one being Isaiah 14:12, and the second one being in Revelations. So those two places that it's mentioned set up this polarity that I keep talking about, these two different aspects of it. In the first one, it is being spoken about in that it has been laid low or cast down to the earth. In other words, the direction it traveled was in the direction of the material realm, the earth. The second way it's talked about in Revelations is...
Sorry, say that again. The way it traveled, what?
Okay, let me actually just say the verse. So Isaiah 14:12 says, "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations." So key point of that being how, where it says, "How you have been cast down to the earth." So in other words, that is the principle of what Lucifer is, being in some way responsible for placing us in the earth realm, you could say, or in the physical experience in the material world. That's what I meant.
Okay.
So the other half of that is where it is mentioned in Revelation, and that would be Revelation 22:16. And there, Jesus is referring to himself as the bright morning star, which is where the word Lucifer comes from. So why would he, or that character anyway, refer to itself as that if it was something negative? He was referring to himself as that because, or associating himself with this, because he understood what it actually was. And what he represented was the positive, redemptive aspect of it. So, in other words, the concept of what Lucifer is, in its redemption, can be associated with Christ, because the Christ is the Redeemer.
But how is that, what I want to say, useful to us? I mean, what I was thinking of before was if Lucifer is basically the barometer, the indicator, how do you define for yourself? It's not like you look in the mirror and you see what Lucifer is to you, and that tells you where you are with regard to the material versus the eternal kind of.
Well,
you know
I'll
what I'm
tell
saying?
you.
Okay.
It comes from
Why would I
understanding
care
what that
about it?
concept is in your own experience. So I've been talking about it as the vehicle or the method by which the light is returned. So when we look at ourselves and we understand how it is we are attempting to improve ourselves in some way, we can get a sense for the way in which this principle is manifesting in us or in our experience and how we are applying it. So basically, Lucifer is your own intelligence. It is your own desire to improve and evolve yourself. Now, in the negative, or relatively speaking, negative polarity, or the sort of material aspect of Lucifer, which is where it's what it's talking about when it mentions it being cast down to the earth. Your intelligence is purely your intellect. It is purely your idea of yourself as you are right now. So in other words, if we only think of ourselves as physical material beings and only think with the intelligence of a physical material being, then that is what we choose to refine. So we instead of going deeper into the nature of what our awareness is and what it is connected to, we assume, in our ignorance and maybe arrogance, that what we have right now is all that we will ever have. Let's refine it, as opposed to expanding what it is that we even think we have. So does that make sense? And I'm going to explain that a bit more, but
Are you gonna contrast that then to the other?
yes.
Okay.
So in this sense, Lucifer becomes your willful application of your intellect. And the intellect that is, in some sense, disconnected from your sense of spirit, or your awareness of your connection to your own source. So in other words, it becomes like a computer. It just moves information around, and it gets better and better and better at doing that. So in other words, this, I know Pastor Richard has talked about, this is mankind's idea that we can do everything on our own without the influence of the Creator. Now what that means is that we have this sense that what we have right now is all that we will ever need, and so we improve it rather than understanding ourselves and responding to the influence of our own source. Does that make sense?
Nick,
Yep. Hey,
how are you?
I'm good.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Lucifer being cast down to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Down talks about to be hewed or to be cut down like a tree, meaning the light left. The light originated in the place of all light, the source of all light, and it was infused into Earth's consciousness. And we have an opportunity to use that light to return to the source of light, or we could use that light to, for lack of a better term, to create our own source of light or our own image of light in terms of religion. And that in itself is the unrightness or what we call the evilness or the darkness of our efforts to return to the source, or the actually not necessarily the darkness, but the inability to return to the source based on our own methods. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Am I following you correctly? In terms
Yes.
of what I just said.
And let me, even last week I said that in that sense, you get stuck in the earth realm or materialism, and it never takes you further than that.
Right.
So last week when I drew that thing with a little vehicle, in the negative, or in this aspect of the polarity, in the earth material sense, coming up with our own ideas about what God is or should be, and then pursuing that, results in us
Right.
getting stuck in this material earth consciousness. And because we don't see a way to get out of it, or even understand the reason to get out of it, all we do is refine our ability to participate in it or with it.
Okay. So my next question is this then.
But yes,
Huh?
go ahead.
I can barely hear you. My next question is, so if that is the case, and it is, then those who develop their own methods to return to the source are in a position to manipulate the whole of the earth by virtue of presenting something that appears to be light that really isn't light,
Yes.
i.e., religion or spirit or false sense of deliverance or salvation. So, excuse me. So, if that happens, then the only way to perpetuate that is to either deny the truth of how the return to the return is supposed to take place, or to put something in its place that looks like it's right. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now,
Anybody else too?
then, so, huh?
Go ahead.
So if that's true, then in order to put something in its place that appears to be correct, you have to put something in its place that makes it looks like the unicity or the oneness between the male and female energy, as opposed to what it really is. Am I making sense?
Yep.
Can you say that one more time?
Therefore, the intimacy of spirituality that is required to return to the source is manipulated in such a way that the method is seen as being sinful, causing men to resent it as opposed to embracing it and being able to return to the source by virtue of uniting the feminine and the masculine energy. Therefore, we end up with a whole cadre of priests who are told that they can't be married, and out from the root of that comes a tree that bears the fruit of denominational religion, who say they don't buy into it, but since they're from their root, they act that way by virtue of not feeling comfortable discussing the oneness between male and female energy, which is sexuality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we end up in confusion. We end up confused rather about how to apply the light that bears us, rather than we realizing that the light, accepting rather that the light bears us, we become the light bearers. And when we become the light bearers, it's because it makes us comfortable in our efforts to manipulate. When we don't really call it manipulation, we call it traveling the road that's going to lead us to heaven when we die, as opposed to realizing that we are indeed heaven, which is enlightenment or light itself. Hello?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just trying to...
No, yes, I follow you and I agree.
We
Okay,
said it off.
great. Okay, guys, thanks. I'm done.
Well, I mean, you know,
But yeah, I mean,
well, hang on, Dick. I mean, you ask us a lot of times if we agree with what you say, and the truth is, I think I'm quiet because it takes a while to assimilate and absorb. So it's hard, both of you, it's hard to say, do you understand me? Nobody's going to say no, although unless it's obvious. But it takes it takes a while to absorb, and it may even take longer than a while. So, you know what I'm saying? That's why it's quiet.
Another question would have been, does it make sense or does it resonate?
It resonates.
I would say it resonates. I don't know if anybody, I mean, the test I would have for myself would be, can I stand up and say the same thing to somebody else? Right? And I think most of us would be smart enough not to. So it's resonate.
Y'all be smart enough not to based upon who you're talking to.
Well, I don't mean that. No, I don't mean from a standpoint of consequence.
Oh,
to some extent, it is a good idea to stand up and say it, because there's that old adage, how do I know what I'm thinking until I say it? I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? You have to hear yourself say it to go, whoops, okay, no, I didn't quite get it.
Okay.
But I'm
yeah, I
saying,
understand what you're saying.
I'm saying my sense is a lot of times there's quiet in here because we're trying to digest it.
Okay. Well, keep in mind now, I'm not accustomed to being on this end of the class.
You see, you're saying you can't see us nodding.
Well, but I think even with
Right.
you, even with you, Nick, because both of you are, you know, genuinely trying to convey an understanding, and we want to respect that. So we say either nothing or we say yes. When I think the truth is we're chewing on it. That's all I'm saying. So
Right.
all right.
Okay.
Anyway, so when you're saying hello, I mean that's what's going on
Right. Okay.
to me.
I got the hello from Nick.
Okay.
Yeah, he taught me.
Yeah, still here.
No, but anyway, all right, never mind.
Yeah. Okay.
But
But
I guess what I'm still sensing in this is I'm trying to think selfishly, so to speak, why a concept or why an energy or whatever called Lucifer is important to me, as opposed to it's a conceptualization or characterization of a self-knowledge that I should be striving, I want to be striving to have. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Because at the end
it's
of the day, that's why I'm saying Lucifer is sort of like a mirror. But you still have to learn to really see what you're seeing in the mirror, right?
But see, the other part about Lucifer is this. Lucifer is not the light. He's a light bearer. So the message, it bears the message of enlightenment. And it says son of the morning. Morning is talking about the first glimpse of light, or a mixture between light and darkness. Because when you look at morning, it talks about the dawn, just before the light truly appears in its fullest form.
I understand what you're saying, but you're characterizing to me what Lucifer represents. I'm trying to interpret how do I understand my own definition of what Lucifer is to me, because that's an indicator of where I am on that continuum of materialism versus eternal, right? And that's what Lucifer...
I think what may be a more definite approach would be not so much to define what it means to you as to how you respond to what it is. Once you begin to understand or accept what it is, how do you respond to it? What is your response?
Yeah,
But to have a response...
that as well.
Huh?
So I have something to say on that as well. This is Sheldon, by the way.
I know who you are.
Oh, okay.
Whoa.
I was speaking to the others.
You been up
By
all
now
night,
they
Sheldon?
would see the stuff.
Oh, okay.
But in all seriousness, Richard, but that is the whole concept of Lucifer in itself, isn't it? It's that thing that shakes you and is different, that completely changes your concept. So if you're trying to relate to Lucifer in how you already think of the idea of Lucifer, then that in itself is you not moving forward, experiencing the Lucifer experience.
You lost me. But, I mean, my point is, and maybe I'm trying to be provocative or a little bit too Jewish and argumentative or whatever, in the old way. I'm getting everything you're saying, I think, to characterize what Lucifer represents. But you're not giving me anything for me to know how I can benefit from that. Because to Lucifer, you're basically saying to each one of us, Lucifer is something different, because we're all at some different place in the awareness that's we're striving for. To be.
No,
Am I?
I don't think that's it at all. we're not saying that Lucifer is something different because we're in a different place. I think what we're saying is that we have had a misconception of who Lucifer is, and we're beginning to see that. So now the question is not a definition of Lucifer that we ourselves come up with as much as it is an experience with the whole concept of realizing that light was excuse me, that this entity bears the light, that we have a choice to respond to by virtue of allowing it to influence us to the extent that it brings us to the source, or by manipulating it to the extent that we create our own source.
Now, the understanding I
Exactly.
have.
So it's just speaking on the misconception that we already have of Lucifer.
There you go,
So,
okay.
Richard, if you think about it, within a lot of your travels around the world and a lot of your interactions with all these different cultures, and without a doubt, I know that you can say that these people have impacted you in very, very positive ways. However, if you had approached or encountered these people, all these different peoples and all these different cultures, with the mindset of the normal, typical American, you know, that the world belongs to me and all of these people are basically under me, etc., then you would not have been able to accept all the great things that those people had to offer. So the thing that we're actually saying is because of the concept that we have of Lucifer needs to change. As soon as our concept of Lucifer changes, then we can have all these good experiences, or it can move us forward in our development.
Okay.
I'm about to hit one of James Richards. Hello.
Yeah, no, I told you, I'm absorbing. No,
It takes us back to
I get it. If basically what you're saying is, I guess it's not a concept that is in front of me very much, so maybe that's why, and I'm sorry if I'm dominating the conversation, but my sense was, if you're coming out of an experience or a training or whatever where you understand that the Creator put evil into this world, the evil is called Lucifer or whatever, and it's like a fixed energy that works against, as opposed to an energy that's supple enough to be either positive or negative, so to speak, depending on your understanding of it. I can get that. And if that's something new for people, and that helps sort of explode their minds, if you want, to be freer, then that I get too. Does that make sense?
Well, Lucifer is evil, but not in the sense of evil that we thought evil is. Lucifer is unright because it's a dawn. It's light. It's a mixed dawn. Is what? Not quite daylight, but not quite darkness. That's not rightness yet. So if it were rightness, then we would not be able to manipulate to do what we want to do with it, because it is what it is. But simply because it is not light and not darkness, we could not daylight, not darkness, not light, not unright, but in between the two, we choose the direction. That's the reason it says sun in the morning, a spark of light or a ray of light that appears as though as the dawn appears, meaning between the two entities, light and darkness.
So, I want to jump in. So, I've been talking about those two polarities, and Pastor just said Lucifer is evil, and that's why I said we're looking at two aspects of the same thing, but in the one where it's the sun in the morning, or the one where it's cast down to the earth, this is the one where it's closer to the material realm. This is the one that has not yet been used for the purpose of, or not yet been redeemed through us and our own action. That's what it's talking about in Revelation. So it's evil in the sense of what evil actually is, which is being closer to the polarity of material or earth, which is quote unquote further away from the Creator.
Right.
Say that one more time, please, Nick.
So, talking about Lucifer as evil in the sense where it's first mentioned in Isaiah, in that it's been cast down to the earth or it participates in the earthly experience, is talking about what evil actually is, which is being closer to the polarity of earth or material or physical, and quote unquote, being further away from the Creator as a result of that. Which is what evil is. It just means removed from the source. Or further away from the source.
Well, isn't this what Israel did though? They took all this light that they were given, and then they encapsulated it into the law, which didn't fully encapsulate it, and then they made the law what people should live by, as opposed to making the spirit or your connection with God be what you live by, and your interaction with the Creator being what you live by. Isn't that sort of the same thing?
I'm glad you brought that up, or said that, and I would say yes, because the actual word that is used in Isaiah is Halel, and which is the name of the morning star, or what they refer to that star as, and it's usually associated with Venus, not an actual star, but the word is Halel, and Halel sounds a lot like Hillel. And so Hillel is associated with study, with school.
Okay.
So it's as Pastor Richard was saying, it's a mixture between light and dark. It's the beginning of the process of returning to the place of redemption. So it's the application of your intellect to things that you do not yet perceive to be spiritual and that you don't yet have the ability to apply directly to your spirit. That is the beginning of that process of redeeming your whole self. So in that sense, Lucifer is the herald, as I've been saying, of the sun, which is the real experience of knowledge and of spirit of your higher self. And in that sense, it's the method, it's the vehicle by which you travel. So that application of your intellect begins that process. That's how you have begun to get there. So does that make it a little bit more clear?
Yeah.
I hope
You're
so. But
you're basically saying through how we receive the light, we create our own interpretation of who or what the Creator is. Or we interpret it as ourselves in terms of intellect, and then we go from there. Yeah.
right.
Well,
So
And we also thereby limit our concept of what the Creator, who or what the Creator is, and we limit also the power of the Creator.
and we limit ourselves.
yes.
Yeah.
See,
Again,
see,
so what?
when we talk about, when you say that we determine the light that the created by virtue of the light that we receive or by intellect, but it is our intellect that does that. But if we deal with it on the basis of who we are from the Creator, then we just accept it for what it is without trying to make anything out of it. We just let it be what it is, which means that it becomes a force in our lives. Thy will be done. Will talks about something that swells or something that flows, something that moves as a crowd of people, or something that moves in large mass. So when we let it be what it is, we're allowing the power of the light not only to move through us, but also to become to give us space to become one with it, by virtue of not defining what it is, not defining what it's going to do, no expectation whatsoever, other than the desire to be one with the light. Anything beyond that is intellect. That's what gets us in trouble.
And that's how it connects to your own experience. When you substitute the things that are of your own creation, in other words, when you substitute your intellect for your ability to draw from your source, we get into trouble. But at the same time, you have to do that in the beginning, because you don't know how to do anything else.
Right.
So that's why, again, it's the mixture between light and dark. It's the beginning. It's not yet the full thing, but it is what eventually carries you there. If you allow that source energy to move through you, as opposed to trying to always qualify it with your intellect.
I agree with that.
Okay, I still am back to almost saying, so what? I mean, why do I need to know about Lucifer in the first place? It seems to me, if I come more, let's say I come at it from this sort of Buddhist Zen koan kind of experience, where the question is what shocks you into being free.
The question is what initiates the process
well, yeah. So,
of you understanding how to free yourself.
So is there a relationship between that and what you're trying to characterize as Lucifer?
Yeah. So when you recognize when you are behaving in a Luciferian way, you can
No, they're not gonna
make
understand.
choice about how you will proceed from there. So, and obviously we all have to do it at some point, but the point is to not idolize our intellects and to recognize that even though we have to use them, there is something deeper that we can choose to become more aware of and more responsive to. That itself informs the intellect, even though we don't quite know that yet. And I mean generally.
Agreed.
Well, what you said is a description really of where I started at least meeting. I don't know about anyone else, but everything I did from the beginning was based upon intellect. The teachings were based upon intellect. Even when the transition was in process, in progress, I still dealt with it from intellect until I began to see the fallacy of it all in terms of trying to understand it or explain it from an intellectual perspective, as opposed to dealing with it based upon experiences, which also allows the recipient of your experience to have an experience of their own, as opposed to trying to get it intellectually. Because right now, most of what we are saying is very difficult to put into intellectual terms. However, or understanding it or receiving it is based upon whether or not it resonates, as opposed to whether or not I completely understand it, or can articulate it again after today. Because the important thing is that It resonates, I allow it to be a part of me, and we move on.
So Nick, can you give an example of how the Lucifer energy
Yeah.
I'm thinking something concrete, like an example.
Let's say you are walking down the street and you come across a fork in the road. Simple as it could be. In this particular aspect of what Lucifer is, in the mixture between light and dark, the application of the intellect, the whole internal process with regards to which direction you take is purely weighing the pros and cons as you perceive them intellectually. And then making a choice based on whatever you come up with.
Okay, so that's a little more concrete.
Yeah, but Nick,
I'm going to say something that may sound really, really well out there. Lucifer was dealt with in Old Testament, New Testament, and in Revelation, but it was not talked about in the Gospels in reference to Jesus. During the period when Jesus was going through his mountain experiences, what he was experiencing was the energy of Lucifer. And if you notice, it does not talk about anything concerning Lucifer. What it talks about is the adversary. And the adversarial thoughts that were trying to move him to experiences that would have caused him to be a purveyor of darkness as opposed to light, a purveyor of confusion as opposed to order. And that was the experience in the wilderness. While he was in the wilderness going through this, and prior to that, the wilderness experience, he was a classic example of a Luciferian experience because he was between the two. I'm glad I'm here saying that they're not there saying won't throw anything at me.
okay, now, but Pastor Richard, now that's starting to tie it together for me.
Okay.
So in other words, if I were to oversimplify this or say it in my own clumsy way, if I'm on the journey, how well I understand it or not, toward enlightenment, toward an understanding of the Christ concept, etc., Lucifer, if you like, is an energy, an entity, or whatever along the road, which to some extent is a reinforcement that tells me I'm on that journey, but in another sense can only take me so far, if you like, if that's a way to say it. Can I say it that way? Because Lucifer in and of itself is an incomplete understanding. So Jesus can say, I'll identify with the redemptive aspect, but I am not the personification of Lucifer in and of. I'm not quite sure how to say it. I'll take the part of Lucifer that is the redemptive aspect. That's what I represent.
I got you.
Lucifer is the incomplete concept, but he's an indicator to you, if you can understand it that way, that you're on the journey. Yes. Right? So you would, in effect, say, thank you, Lucifer, I got what all I'm going to get out of you, and keep going if you're truly continuing to more and more enlightenment and understanding. Is that right?
Yes, you can thank him. Like, it's no different than Obama sending Bush a thank you card. Because if he hadn't screwed up everything, he would never would have gotten elected.
Well, yeah. Or he wouldn't have told us what we got to work on. Because he didn't
So
invent,
it's
he didn't invent anything.
A catalyst. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I can help with that in that same glimmer of light at the end of this confusing tunnel that you are seeing. Can everybody see the screen I put up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and you see me drawing on it?
Yep.
People over the phone, sorry, I'll send it to you. But what Pastor Richard was just talking about is the explanation or I had drawn something and I'll try to explain last week. So here are the two polarities of what we're talking about. On the left here, which Pastor was just talking about, was Jesus' experience in the wilderness and the mountains with the Satan force and how he responded to it through the agency of the energy of what this thing called Lucifer is, determines whether or not he can progress to the actual source or whether or not he gets stuck at his material intellectualness. So, as I said last time, Satan and Lucifer are two different things. But Lucifer is the vehicle and is similar to Satan in that it's a catalyst for movement in a particular direction. But it responds more so to how we use it rather than Satan does, or what that is anyway. Because, well, I'll stop there. But does what was just said, does this help explain or clarify what was just said anyway?
A bit. I mean, it's clear that Satan and Lucifer are separate things. I mean, there's some interplay between them, right? But they're not the
Right.
same thing.
Right. It's like, when you say, if we want to deal with it from a perspective of our, religious experiences, then, again, I'm glad I'm on my way to you want to throw at me, but there are Luciferian experiences every Sunday morning, but they revert to intellect or lack thereof, so it never moves to the place where the Satan or the adversarial thoughts can be challenged to the extent that they move you beyond that Luciferian experience. And that is the reason you keep getting the same message or words that at age 30 that you got at age 10, because it is stuck, hadn't even gotten to the wilderness experience yet to challenge the thoughts.
Can I ask a question? I'm seeing that as the Luciferian experience being like all of us who receive the light. We receive the light. And then we go one way or another. We either go the materialism, fleshly route, where we become corrupted, or we go the other route, and we're able to move beyond that barrier that Nick drew there. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, yes, but no. I'm saying that you either move, you see it, and you move forward to incorruption, or you get stuck. It's not a movement as much as it's being stuck in a place of corruption. And the corruption is not something that, the legalistic definition of corruption. The corruption.
No. I mean, we are influenced so much either by our intellect or materialism or whatever that we don't move beyond
right
where we need to be.
Yes. I think you're right.
Nick, why do we need a vehicle to carry us one way or the other?
The vehicle is symbolic. It's something that you have, that you interact with. It's like an energy that you can access whenever you want. The vehicle is the method by which you attempt to return to your source. It's what carries you in a particular direction. And it's just a symbol, the vehicle sense anyway.
Mm-hmm. And what's the relationship of this symbolic vehicle to our intellect?
The intellect is a vehicle that carries you in a particular direction, so is the influence of your own spirit, which is deeper than the intellect.
Right.
So you will get stuck in the material, physical, religious experience if you only access the vehicle of your intellect. However, the intellect is a lower extremity of that same spirit that you possess.
And how is that different from Lucifer?
Say that again?
How is the intellect different from? Because we're talking about two. You're saying that the intellect is a vehicle or a type of vehicle, and the Luciferian energy is as well.
Right, I'm saying they're not different.
Oh,
Yeah, but
that makes
see,
sense.
I see them as a little bit different in terms of if Lucifer is the light bringer. So everybody receives that light, but then everyone, through their own perception or through their own needs or through their own confusions, through their own whatever, they will either allow themselves to be intellectually taken off in one direction, or they will be taken off in the other direction, or spiritually taken off in the other direction. Am I seeing that wrong?
Yes, but I would say, what is the light? We kind of mentioned it, but so everybody receives a light, but what is that?
Everyone has access to the
Because
energy from the
Lucifer is not
Creator.
the light; is the light bearer.
Right.
Right.
So what is the light?
It's that part of you that's put inside you by the Creator.
Yes, it is you. You are the light of the world. So the way the light chooses to move, or the vehicle the light chooses to use to carry it in a particular direction, determines where it goes, whether it returns to its source or it gets stuck.
That's what I see though. That Lucifer is the light bearer. He brings it, and then whatever is in you will take it to wherever it goes. Are you saying that Lucifer is part of us too?
Yes, in a way. But I see what you're saying now. Whatever is in you will allow you to go further than your own intellect would allow you to go. But I'm saying that Lucifer itself is not. It changes depending on your own understanding of what can carry you farther.
So, I think I understand what you're trying to say. It's just when you characterize it as a, Lucifer, as if, hey dude, Lucifer doesn't represent, you're saying is a method. It's the way by which, that's why I come back to sort of a mirror that just, it's what are we trying to say? We can't translate all these things we're saying about Lucifer to then think of Lucifer as inherently something itself. It's just this sort of, at a certain moment.
It's difficult because, as anybody who studies this stuff will tell you, there's no.
Right.
Everything we're talking about is a thing, but everything that we're talking about is part of us, because everything that we see around us as things is just a projection of something that's in us.
But what I'm saying is, I guess I see Lucifer, if I go back to remembering years ago when I understood the definition of a particle. Think of Lucifer as a particle. Particle is the probability of a concentration of energy in a given space. That doesn't mean a particle is any one thing except at any given instant. Right? And doesn't have a life, so to speak, that exists in and of itself eternally. It may be part of something, but it comes into creation and it disappears. So I'm thinking Lucifer is something similar. in and of himself doesn't have any permanent characteristics except as, but the definition of what Lucifer is, I can't see the definition of Lucifer apart from your own understanding. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
I mean,
And I understand. I think I understand that.
you could say the devil, you know, the Lord, the Creator created the devil, which I don't buy. But anyway, like it's some eternal, it's like hell and heaven. Hell is eternal, heaven is eternal. My gosh, you know, you better choose right, because wherever you're only going to get one shot and that's it for eternity. You know what I'm saying? Lucifer is not a fixed thing forever. He's like a particle.
It's
Like a quark, like
it's
whatever.
a tool, but
Yeah.
it is a real thing. And I
For
think
an-
some of
for
our
an instant.
difficulty with understanding all this stuff is because we tend to apply material concepts to spiritual things. But yes, in the way that you're trying to understand it, I would agree.
But I think the usefulness of those material explanations are they give us an indicator. I mean, the physics, cosmology, these theorems, these formulas, they've given us ideas that permeate through us in a way that before them we never allowed, or most of us could never conceive of, right? So,
Right, that's not what I was talking about though. So the theories and stuff, that's good, but I meant the way in which they teach you to think about things. Is what I was referring to with your explanation of the particle and stuff. I apologize for everyone who was totally lost. Please ask questions when we get to the place where we can ask questions. Anyway, does that make sense? Dad.
oh, me. Well, yeah, but I mean, take the difference between Newtonian and subatomic physics. Okay?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, in the broad sense,
Sounds
what
great.
did we create with Newtonian physics? No, we created an industrial revolution, we created trains, we created big, heavy things. Then you get to subatomic physics and we have the internet, computers, and all this kind of stuff that came out of that. So it's analogous. The Luciferian aspect of that, if you like, was that it allowed us to evolve, if I can use that word, in a much more profound and sort of different direction. We're not still building trains and big buildings the same way. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, I understand. I think I understand the spirit of what you're saying, but yes, we are. The trains and the buildings are just smaller now.
Okay, I agree with you in that sense because,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that Lucifer is just telling us, Lucifer is incomplete. If anything, we define Lucifer by our own understanding of our incompleteness in the journey. Is that not
Right.
fair?
And,
Okay.
well, in this sense, it's incomplete because even though we have all this advanced ability to manipulate things at a very, very tiny level, we're still just doing the same thing.
Right, I take your point. I get it.
So in order to go further than that, we have to access the other polarity of what Lucifer is through getting in touch with our own source so that we can use it for the purpose of redemption rather than refining our ability to manipulate this material stuff.
All right, so what, Lucifer is a characterization of the concept of yin and yang and just telling us don't forget there's the yang along with the yin?
That's probably a good way to think about it.
I'm not
In
sure
that-
I could drive home with that in my mind. Okay, I mean, I can sort of get at that,
Good thing you're not driving.
but that's why I say that then the usefulness of Lucifer is a mirror-like thing to show us where we are in our understanding of that.
Right, if you
I'm not
are
demeaning it, but if I thought him as a
so
personality,
inclined to think that way.
Okay, but even with
if you're-
your thing about the subatomic whatever, but the Luciferian experience is some people will take that and use it, this internet, blah blah blah, to better mankind. Some people will take it to say, okay, how much money can I make from it, and how much can I exploit people by using it. So there is a yin and a yang side of it.
well, the yin and yang is in every concept. There's two sides to every concept.
Yeah, so
Right.
the one who
Just
exploits will get
like the
stuck. Whereas
two
the
polarities
one
of
who's
this
using
thing
it
that
to
we're
better
talking about that I keep
mankind
mentioning.
will move to a higher level.
Okay. I understand, I think, what the words we're using, except I don't understand quite how it, we come up, we put it into a package we call Lucifer. I understand it better when you're saying, when it's more of a verb, when it's more of a, or whatever it would be. You know? But anyway.
Luciferize.
Just accept it.
Okay, that's what I was trying to say. Right, just shut up so we can move on. Right. All right, I get it. No, I gotta stick my finger in everything. Come on. Anyway. All right, I'll be quiet. It's fine, but others are being quiet in their own way. So what then is Satan? Can we go back and if we're going to lay out the landscape here, particularly in your drawing, we have Satan and then we have the devil. We talked about Satan, and then I don't know if it's devil or demonic or what.
I only had one thing in there. That was just Satan.
You had Satan, I know that. But the other guy that bounces around the back of your head from childhood is the devil.
Those are the same.
Okay.
So yeah,
So Satan is,
people have come up with a lot of different ways. Well, have divided all these things up, mashed them together, whenever it was convenient for it. These are distinct concepts that play into the overall energy of reality and us. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, it's might be difficult to accept that this entity or energy called Satan was, yes, in fact, created by the Creator. If not directly, then as a result of its willingness to initiate creation in the first place.
Right.
So yes, that was created for a specific purpose. Now, once you get a sense of what that purpose is, it becomes a lot less scary, and you begin to get a sense for what these experiences called heaven and hell actually are. Because they're not, nothing was created for the purpose of destroying you. So I know this is kind of moving into a little bit different subject, but does anybody have any questions or comments about whatever so far? And it could be, if you need an explanation, let me know, because I know this stuff is ridiculous sometimes.
I hate to even mess with this anymore, because I feel like every time we poke it, it spirals a little bit more. But I'm thinking about Lucifer and intellect, and I see how they are or can be the same. And I have a very base, kind of ignorant question. So, huh?
That's kind.
No, yeah. So what happens if you're dealing with someone who doesn't have a whole lot of intellect? Maybe. I'm like I said, it's base and ignorant.
Oh,
maybe it's not
no, that's a
fair,
good
but
question.
you know.
Hence the
How
expression,
many, like,
No, I'm not talking necessarily. I guess I'm not really talking about book smarts, but I mean, there's some people who just don't. They're not really curious about anything. You understand where I'm coming from?
Just stagnant as opposed to dumb?
I love you, Nick. Since it's on the table, let's talk about both.
Okay, good. Oh, by the way, let me throw something in there. The word dumb means you can't speak, right? So usually people associate people who are less intelligent with inability to articulate what it is that you mean, which is where that word comes from. Or why we associate it with it meaning not intelligent.
Interesting. Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't originally defined that way, that's right.
Right.
Just
So, good question. Think about all the people, especially in Black history in the United States, not much intellect in terms of, well, they weren't allowed to develop their intellect, but it didn't matter because they still had a connection to their own spirit. And they passed that from generation to generation regardless of intellectual ability. So if you are less intellectually inclined, if you are still willing to move in a particular direction, it's sometimes easier to get in touch with what is deeper than that. Because the intellect is a maze of terms and so many little intricate things you can play with, but it still doesn't get you to the point. So if someone is less intellectual in that sense, then depending on the nature of their own desire, they can still access the same thing. They would explain it in simpler terms though.
Okay.
Possibly.
Now, someone who is stagnant, those people make everybody annoyed everywhere. You are neither hot nor you're cold, nor cold or whatever that verse is. We can't do nothing with you because you don't want to do nothing. Until you are willing to be not stagnant or whatever, you're just kind of going to be bleh.
You're comatose, you're asleep. Yeah, basically.
But that's fine. That could just be somebody's thing. If they need to go through that until the point where they wake themselves up, fine.
Can't that lead to being stuck
You're dead.
Yes,
even faster?
I think they choose to be stuck if you're stagnant.
Yeah.
it is a sort of stuckness.
Because if you're not seeking, in terms of whatever, if you're not seeking, then you are just sort of stuck. You're in a quagmire.
But it's less insidious than being trapped in your own intellectual conjuring.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
So it's easier. But then again, you would imagine the quality of your experiences would be very flat, very shallow, I guess we'd say. But maybe that's a arrogant.
Right.
We prefer
And you
to
would
think
be
that.
very easy to manipulate, unfortunately.
Which is why it's a growing phenomenon in our culture. So that's the big battle, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not the you got it right or wrong, it's the duh versus
Yeah, it's the nothing.
it's the huh.
Watch this quote-unquote reality television and think absolutely nothing.
Well, we said 20 years ago here in Foundation, when we were much more in traditional scripture and understanding, I remember Pastor Richard even talking about someone he knew who, even if he'd been involved with drugs or whatever, was, what do I want to say, and I'm paraphrasing very badly, but he was out there trying to understand, trying to live, trying to experience. So there was something more genuine, or there was a quality in that as opposed to somebody who was afraid to do anything. So he was more likely at some point in his life maybe to leave that to go for something more profound, if you like, or more positive. But because he was in the game, so to speak, playing the game, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, what he never did, he recognized that it, as a search as opposed to something that he began to worship.
Yeah, that's.
And what I mean by that is there are people who worship the intellect.
Yeah.
And that is how you really get stuck or move in the opposite direction.
Well, I think we had a small example of that in the was it the graduate economics student from Amherst who exposed the fallacy in the research done by the two Harvard economists that showed that what is it called, that whole concept of austerity worked, and he said, wait a minute, it's the same thing. They were, if you like, in love with their own.
Drank their own Kool-Aid.
They drank their own Kool-Aid, and he's the guy who said, wait a minute, there's a fly in your Kool-Aid. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Making you delusional.
It was like 5 different metaphors. This is awesome.
I can't find one to settle on very quickly.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's lovely because he was an undergraduate student type, so he was, this was the student telling the master, whoops. Anyway, yeah, so that's intellect for its own sake.
Actually, the master thought he was the master, but he's actually the student.
Well, he had to learn to be the student. He'd given up. He needed a student to tell him he still had something to learn, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
But that's it. We revere people who come out of Harvard. Until you meet people who come out of Harvard and see them work in the field and you realize there are good ones and there are dumb ones. Look at this senator from Arizona or whatever he is. Right? Harvard graduate, blah, 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 and all he's talking about is... Anyway. So...
Nick, I think you've
Anyway.
you've
Sorry.
helped to really clear it up for me. Especially with the example of the stagnant person who it seems has chosen deliberately not to use their intellect in one way or another in terms of spiritual movement, whether that's deeper into themselves and their concept of materialism or movement towards the creator.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the black people that you mentioned.
Mm.
I feel like they're still using intellect, but just maybe not in the same way that we think of it in terms of books and logic and that kind of thing. But it sounds like
definitely applying their intelligence.
Right.
Well,
And intelligence and intellect are two kind
Okay.
of distinct things as well.
I got you.
Well, the difference, I think, is we use the concept wisdom. I mean, I think wisdom is intelligence based on experience applied to use in a way that creates learning, useful learning.
Where I was going with that is that if you're willing to
Intellect is just logic or reason.
subordinate your intellect to the deeper part of you that I can't remember how you phrased it, Nick, but I'm thinking about your connection to the source or your higher self. If your intellect is subordinate to that, I think that's where you get wisdom, where you're moving in the direction like closer towards the source. It's like you said, it's just a tool at that point.
Right.
It's just
So
enough to articulate or think about what you're receiving.
Well, that's why, for me anyway, one of those tests to ask, the question you can say is, when an intellectual, whatever you want to call it, has gone on, exercise, at some point people can raise their hand and say, so what? What's the application of that? It's just discussion for discussion's sake, argument for argument's sake, that kind of thing. So if it just goes in circles like that, that's this whole left side of this thing, ultimately.
Oh yeah, navel gazing.
And it's can be pretty sexy, I mean, particularly if you're winning the argument, so to speak, right?
And are there any kids in the room that you are unwilling to go through the whole explanation of this for?
They just left.
No kids.
So, and when we say intellectual masturbation, that is exactly what we're doing. We're producing nothing. And that is the difference between masturbation and intercourse. Because when you have intercourse with the source that you are connected to, you break out of that cycle of running around in circles feeling good about yourself, but actually doing nothing and getting deeper and deeper, more deeply and deeply entrenched in the physical illusion.
Okay.
So real intercourse or real knowledge is drawing from that source and even just recognizing that your intellect comes from something else
Yes.
and responds to the influence of something else.
Okay, I'm out, people. Have a great session. I'm done. I'll see you next week.
Okey-doke.
All right.
Bye.
Travel
Okay,
safe.
bye.
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 Yeah. Yeah, I think, so in a way, to me, when you draw, the picture you drew, the drawing you made with the little stick figure, you know, Satan on one side, right? So he's, at the moment, the way you've drawn her, it's always him. What were we just saying? That's at a point of not balance necessarily, but what's the word? What we were talking about just a minute ago, the way we were characterizing ho-hum, not decided, stagnant. He hasn't set off on the journey yet, so to speak, because the real journey is a little more zigzaggy, serpentine, etc. You know what I'm saying? So in a way,
Right.
that's not unity in and of itself. That's no commitment to taking the journey. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Right? Anyway.
Is he talking?
I said I hope this is a little bit more clear by the end. Just because I know this is a little bit difficult to go over the internet and stuff, but
I think we're getting there.
I think so.
Nick, if there's someone
just an
listening,
image.
I don't know, I hesitate to ask you to give out an email address or something. But I'm just wondering, other ways for people to ask questions.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I don't know what set up
Not
to
a
do that, but
contact us foundation.
any questions for anybody?
You can leave comment, yes. I don't know, I'll have to take a look and make sure.
You need to enlarge the circle, because otherwise through Facebook or whatever, you have your friends. Yeah. Well.
So, unless anybody would like to start or has any other questions anyway, I think I would like to end here.
I
I
promised
think that was a lot
Sheldon
of stuff.
that one day I would ask you about Nikola Tesla. So, at
Oh,
some point,
really?
I will. Yes, I'm very curious about him.
So you're gonna start something.
No, I'm not starting anything. I'm just giving him a heads up for what may be coming. That's all.
He kind of, from time to time, pops up again when you studying stuff like this.
Is this somebody on the internet?
Nikola Tesla?
I can't remember. It sounds ancient.
Tesla, Einstein, energy,
Oh.
AC, DC, current, all that good stuff. Inventor,
Tesla.
died a virgin.
Yeah, he basically invented a lot of things.
Discovered or invented?
Kind of both. I was gonna say he invented the 20th century. Maybe that's a bit too much, but he kind of did.
He did, yeah. I
Because, in a way, you don't have to accept this, but if I were drawing a line down the middle of the page you did with the guy that's the stick figure, and you had sort of materialism on the left and, spirituality on the right, a definition of things on the left becomes invention, and on the right becomes discovery. This is something that I've been intrigued by often and all the time. I mean, Einstein himself would not tell you he invented anything. He discovered. His formulas were a discovery of truths and a way to sort of characterize them. Right? So what's really invented as opposed to what's discovered?
I see what you mean. I think.
Because that makes invention have a certain false quality to it.
Well,
what do we say to
I
each other?
guess
You
it's
invented
It's
that.
a corruption.
Yeah, we say you
Progressing
invented
further.
that. You made that up, is what we sort of say. It doesn't have a truth, right?
Well, I think I see what you're saying. But even then, it kind of does. It's that truth applied in a new way. But I would have to do some more research about Tesla, but his he disagreed with Einstein, I think, on a number of points.
Interesting.
I think he was one of those people who saw something, but towards the end of his life, didn't have the capability to actually keep it together to be able to translate it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like what?
Like how the physical and the spiritual are related in terms of how you can physically draw energy from the what we would call like the vacuum or something.
Did you? Incidentally, that makes me think, and just for 2 seconds, because there was something on TV the other night about, and what's his name, Stephen Hawking, and it was a show that said, and Stephen Hawking was participating in it because it's been something he's espoused for a long time. We understand enough about the universe now that we don't need a creator to have. We don't need a creator to explain its creation. And yet everything I heard said still came after the fact, so to speak. The concept that the universe can create something out of nothing. This is what science believes now.
Yeah,
Somehow
I'm
that-
actually quite familiar enough to be able to describe that and explain it. And it's exactly what we were talking about. It's the perfect refinement of the intellectual understanding of reality.
Yeah, that's the sense I get when I hear him.
And if for all intents and purposes, it's totally inclusive. There are no loopholes. It's
Yeah.
perfect, except you still don't know what you're actually talking about. What is energy? What is light? None of these questions even come up because there was no even way to approach that understanding within this method
Well, but
of
what I
pure intellect.
the-
You can begin to see a path out using your intellect, in which case then you have to go out. But within itself, you don't ask those questions because those questions aren't valid because they produce nothing. This is funny because one of the books I'm writing, the book I've started to write is opening up with this exact concept.
Never thought about intellect and logic as a walled garden. That's what it sounds like.
well, it's just so powerful. You know, and that's what
So
fas-
powerful.
But
It's
ultimately-
like a
That's-
perfect match.
that's what
Didn't know
fascinates
it
me
was
by a
magic.
guy like
You're
Stephen
wow, that's
Hawking.
real.
With all the things he's had to overcome in his life. I guess it's just pushed him in that direction of being more and more committed to pursuing that course of understanding. But I still go back to the drawing you made, for example, where, you know, the creator created the circle, and you can almost think of it as like medicine, when they inject the needle in to fertilize the egg or whatever it is, the same thing. Boom. Everything that was needed was created within. So everything that was explained in the program was characterizing what was in, which is the ability of the universe to create itself over and over again. But it doesn't answer the question of how this gets started in the first place. Anyway, I just found that interesting. So who knows? Maybe he'll have some epiphany toward the.
No, I don't think
Maybe
it's
not.
very, very, and even
At least
nobody
it's
who studies that stuff necessarily needs to, or even would, unless they were already searching in that direction.
yeah.
But I mean, even what he or what he studied is good. I sort of don't like when anybody who studies that begins to make proclamations, in a certain sense. But you know,
Well, draw the ultimate conclusion from it, I guess you'd say, yeah. Okay, anyway, you can go.
if anybody can hear me, this was just
We hear you. What happened?
the sound got terrible.
Can we Skype you tomorrow night? Whoops, sorry, can't hear you, Dad.
Okay, I think it's back.
You can
Very
hear us?
staticky.
No, you
Okay.
can't.
Yeah.
I'm here now too. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sometimes the microphone just just craps out. Sorry.
Have you been gone for a long time, Rainier?
No, I've been here. I'm
Okay,
just listening. I had to feed VJ.
okay. At 5 in the morning, or whatever it is.
Okay.
Nick, can we Skype tomorrow evening?
Yeah, let's do that.
What time? Hey.
I'll call you probably around 7 or something.
Okay, sorry folks, I'm just taking advantage of this wormhole.
I know that's right.